you. So hi, everyone. In case I haven't met you before, I'm Rosa Maimi. I'm Director of Engagement and Membership. Good to see everyone. This is the monthly Section Leader Support Call. And as a reminder, because we know we ask you to do so many calls with us, this is the monthly call where we have section leaders and others join us to talk about kind of operational pieces that help you do your jobs, but also give you all the opportunity to speak to each other as sections in terms of best practices and that kind of thing. So that's what this call is. These are about an hour long, and you heard it's being recorded, and Josh will send you all an email later today or tomorrow with any of the materials you see here today, as well as with the actual recording. So again, welcome, and why don't we go to the next slide? So the agenda today, we're doing our welcome. I'll do a couple of updates quickly here. We're going to start off with a quick report from the meetings team about scientific programs for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then the bulk will be a section spotlight around financials. We've got Nikki from the finance team. You all may remember her from the onboarding we did with many of you, and she's going to do a little bit of a refresher, or maybe new for some of you who didn't do those calls with us in terms of how to look at your section finances, and also have education sections and ASE sections represented here to talk about how they do things. So we want to spotlight those sections here and then do a little bit of open mic. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so I'd like to turn it over before we get into this to Amber, who's our VP of Affiliation, Engagement, and Membership, and have her welcome you as well. Amber.
Thanks, Rosa. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you and meet some of you for the first time who are joining us today. But thanks for joining us. I hope everyone, is enjoying their summer so far. As Rosa mentioned, this meeting is really a great opportunity for us to do a deeper dive into some of those topics that might come up, let's say, at a council meeting or in another venue. So we're really trying to be mindful of what we're hearing from you during council meetings and at other times to make sure that we give you the proper space to explore some of these topics that we know are really, really important to you. But if we do miss something or something slips, through the cracks, we hope that you will let us know, because, we really want to develop these agendas with you in coordination. So thank you for all you do. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Rosa, because I know we want to hear from our sections today, and we've got a lot to talk about. So thanks, Rosa, back to you.
Thanks, Amber. We appreciate that. And I wanted to do a couple of quick updates. So if we go to the next slide. Those of you who were on a prior monthly section leader call may remember that we had our government relations advocacy folks on with us talking about position statement process. And we wanted to just put in a couple of slides that they've been using in some other sessions, other meetings. So you may have seen these before if you've, for example, been on a leadership call or something like that. But just a reminder of the position statement process, and you go to the next slide. And then upcoming opportunities to comment and engage with us. So we won't talk about it much here now, but you'll get this information, like I said, after the fact, in case you want to peruse it, and you can contact Lexi. She knows that we're mentioning this today. Here's her email address to ask her about the process or ask her team about any of these particular opportunities to engage on these issues with the AGU. So with that, let's go to the next slide. And Nicole, before we get to you, and I just want to mention, Mary Moni, I noticed that you're on the call, so I may ask you if you want to say a few words, but the section leaders got an email recently from Josh McKee on my team, letting you know that when we did the one-on-one meetings with you about the section events for AGU 23, that there was a proposal in place where we would replace selling tickets for receptions and section gatherings. That's usually on the Tuesday evening of the meeting, and replace that with the $50 subsidy per attendee and the general registration revenue. So that means essentially that you won't be charged for that event. We're making it an open event to hopefully drive additional participation and to make it a better experience for attendees and for staff too. I know there were some things that happened last year, so this is our attempt to kind of make that better. So I just want to mention that we sent an email, Josh did a few days ago. So if you didn't see that email, there's the good news, hopefully good news. And some of you have reached out and mentioned that. And again, Mary, not to put you on the spot, but did you want to say anything about it?
I just wanted to thank everybody for their input. I know last year there was a little bit of friction about the event, and we appreciated your input so that we as an organization could take the step back and look to see how we could create a better experience. So just wanted to say thank you. I hope the solution that we came up ends up being a positive for everybody involved, as we really hope it allows more people to attend the sections, and even people who we've heard a lot of discussion over periods of time of being able to want to attend more than one, to be able to talk to different groups. And we hope that this solution will allow people to make some additional connections they may not have been able to make before. So thank you all.
Thanks, Mary, and thanks for jumping in. I appreciate it. And I see a few things in the chat. So yes, I'm glad that this is good. So why don't we move on, Nicole? Why don't you give us an update on scientific programs? And I think you're going to be with us for about 10 minutes or so. And then we do have open mic at the end so that questions can come up here, but also at the end if you want. So Nicole, are you ready for us?
I'm ready.
Great.
All right, next, sorry, a couple introductory slides you can go through. Next and next. All right, as Susan said, I'm Nicole Oliphant, Director of Scientific Programs at AGU. I think all of you know me from the numerous emails that we send. You're reading them all. I just wanted to give a quick overview of the program. Obviously, the slides will be available for you to review, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or I'll have time for questions at the end. Just wanted to note the schedule at a glance for this year. It is available on the AGU 23 website. We did mirror a little bit from last year's meeting in Chicago, but we did have made a few changes. The plenaries, oral sessions, named lectures, and meeting sessions will all be hybrid this year. The first oral session block will begin at 8:30. We did receive some great feedback about a little bit later start time, so we're trying to accommodate a lot of the feedback that we received. Oral sessions will still remain 90 minutes. The in-person poster hall will include AM and PM daily session blocks with dedicated networking and poster viewing twice each day. There will be no hybrid in-person poster sessions. The online poster sessions will be scheduled in late January 24, and I'll go into that a little bit later. The program committee had met and reviewed, again, a lot of the feedback that we received about separating out the online poster sessions, and the decision was made to separate them from the in-person meeting. We are bringing back the e-lightning theater this year. And again, those will be in person only. We are doing our best to make sure that the e-lightning theater is in a central area. So it's not considered an afterthought and very visible to our attendees. We'll have dynamic innovations, which will be scheduled during the week. Another change this year is our learning workshops, which were previously known as scientific workshops. We will have 90-minute half-day and full-day workshops scheduled on a Sunday prior to the start of AGU 23, as well as in late January as well. And then select staff organized short workshops and learning sessions will be held during the week of the meeting. There will also be some select online workshops may be held the week prior to the meeting, as well as town halls that will online only town halls that will be held the week prior to the meeting. Right. Again, based on all the feedback that we received from the meeting survey, from council, from our program committee members, attendees, we really tried to, the program committee really tried to make two distinct experiences this year between the face-to-face meeting and the virtual meeting, with again making the hybrid sessions with our orals and keynotes still available. We're trying to address the issue and experience of both the in-person and online presenters trying to split their time between an in-person and online meeting. Again, we're separating the on-site and online experience as much as possible. abstract submissions, which I'll also touch on in a few more slides. The authors will declare whether they're in person or online participation during the abstract submission so that conveners can schedule them into the appropriate sessions. And good news is we're receiving many early requests for letters of invitation for visas and travel approval to participate in person. We know that last year there were struggles with some of our international attendees getting visa appointments. So hopefully that'll be an easier process this year. Next slide. So in our oral sessions, NAEM Lectures Union sessions will be very similar to last year. They will all be hybrid. They will accommodate both in-person and online presenters. I'm asking our conveners to follow a recommended format for the hybrid sessions, but again, conveners will have the flexibility to schedule their sessions as they see fit. But we are, again, requesting to keeping the presentations to 10 minutes, allowing Q&A with each presenter after their talk, and then allowing 10 minutes at the end of each session for discussion. Online presenters in oral sessions will be required to pre-record their presentations as we did last year. The difference this year is we will be enforcing a deadline. A lot of the technical issues we had or presentation issues we had in online and on the oral sessions where the presentations didn't make it to the rooms on time. Our AV folks and our speaker ready room, are very busy on site. They're managing over 8,000 oral presentations for the week. And it's really, they do their best to get presentations there within time. But if a presentation isn't uploaded until right before the session, they can't guarantee that it's going to be there. So we will be enforcing an early deadline for online pre-recorded presentations. Next slide. Again, I mentioned we're bringing back e-lightning sessions this year. These, again, will be in person only. The presenters will prepare an iPoster. They'll give a 3-minute overview of their poster presentation in a theater and then stand at their designated monitor for the remainder of the session. Next slide. In-person poster sessions will be, again, traditional the authors will create their paper posters and stand in the poster hall at their designated time. We're going back to the 2 blocks, 4-hour plus blocks a day. Again, with 1 hour of dedicated viewing where there is no other scientific program going on. So this was really well received last year. Our presenters really felt that we had a great crowd in the poster hall, and they really felt that they were not having to compete for attention while other things were going on. The in-person poster presenters will also have the opportunity to create an iPoster or upload a PDF of their poster, which will be in the online poster gallery for viewing by all of the attendees during the week of the meeting and after the meeting. Next slide. So again, the biggest change to our program this year is the online poster sessions. We really heard the feedback and the struggles of in-person chairs and attendees trying to watch the online sessions, as well as attend in-person sessions as well, or get to in-person sessions attend as well. We worked hard with the program committee to come up with a proposal to move the poster discussion sessions outside of the meeting. We have determined a late January schedule. We're still working out some of the logistics around that. And again, a lot of the feedback from the program committee to make sure that the sessions are not an afterthought, that it's a combined like AGU week with additional online workshops, some keynotes, possible and curated invited plenaries. So that's those sessions, again, will be a continuation of the meeting. There won't be a separate registration. There'll be a continuation of AGU 23. And we're working with our marketing team to ensure that that is very clear to our attendees and to the session chairs and to the presenters, again, that they do not feel like it's an afterthought. It's a really continuation of the meeting. Also, the online, go back, thank you. The online poster session, presenters, again, will be asked to prepare their presentations prior to the AGU 23. So again, that in-person attendees are able to access their posters online and be able to engage with them the week of the meeting as well. They can set up separate chat times or separate meetings during the week to be actually engaged during the week of AGU 23. Okay, sorry, next slide. And again, this year we're having innovations, the learning workshops and town halls. We had a tremendous amount of submissions this year for each of these. They're still quite under review. We're hoping to get our notifications out by the end of this week, early next week. Again, our innovations, they're not traditional oral sessions. These are very interdisciplinary, creative, and dynamic programming, meeting within a meeting. There are learning workshops, which again have evolved from our scientific workshops. These are half full day disciplinary and transdisciplinary learning workshops that share knowledge and skills. In our town halls, again, we had a large number of town halls submitted this year. Those will be scheduled during the week of the meeting. Again, and select online only. We may be held the week prior to AGU 23. Next slide. So I wanted to remind everyone about their name lectures. We have the schedule of the name lectures for this year. If you have already selected your lecturer, please be sure to email myself and the AGU Honors email address as soon as they are confirmed. This will allow us to reach out to them to confirm their participation and to collect their abstract and be able to waive the fee for them and the first author rule so that we can send them a direct invitation for them to submit to the session. And this also helps us get them into the system so that when the program committee is scheduling their sessions, we can ensure that there's no conflicts. Next slide. There's also a few AGU section awards that do have talks associated with them. I just wanted to remind everyone to make sure that you're identifying. AGU staff does not schedule these talks or these sessions. So please make sure you're working with once the awardees are identified, that you're working with identified conveners of the appropriate session, or if you're including them to acknowledge them during your name lecture, that you're working with the program committee staff so that they know to make sure that those people have either their names are included in the session, or the abstracts are included in the session, or there's a reserved spot for them, a placeholder for them, so that we can ensure that there's a scheduling slot for them. Yes, sorry. I see a hand.
Oh, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Kimberly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I had a quick question of clarification about the section awards with talks for the invited speaker. So I'm a little confused about the order of when we have decided as a committee who's the awardee versus when we should tell you, I'm guessing, rather than our program committee, Nicole, and versus when AGU releases us to tell the awardee that they get this award. Is that clear? And so I was wondering if you could clarify that.
So yes, so we and Rosa can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're able to let AGU staff know or your program committee rep know prior to the embargo being lifted. It will not be shared outside of that. We just want to again make sure that because of the timing of when the awardee is identified and through the vetting process, we want to make sure that they're not missed in the program. So again, if we need to put a placeholder because the person hasn't been identified, or if there's any concerns about releasing their name to us or the program committee reps, we just want to make sure that there's a place for them to give their presentation and they're not missed during the scheduling process.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, we have a few other questions, but I also in the chat, but I also want to give enough time for our section spotlight. Let me pull a couple of them here, Nicole, and
Sure.
then maybe you can go into the chat and answer further. But we've got one from Laura to confirm, are there workshops both the week prior and in late January? Will workshop organizers get to choose when their workshops are, since it was advertised as late January?
Yes, when we collected workshop proposals, they gave us their preferred times. So yes, a lot of them did choose to be held during the week of the meeting. So some select organizers asked to be scheduled in January. So we're just working to see if there's, I think, maybe a couple that wanted to have their workshops the week prior to the meeting. So we again, depending on the capacity, we'll either determine that or to see if they can move to January. But for the majority of people who submitted, they wanted to do an in-person hybrid meeting, a workshop, or in January. They were very open to that.
Thank you. And I'm going to take one quick question from Kristen. Yeah, so if you've already told my team, the honor staff, who the awardee is, we'll let Nicole know. So you don't need to double up on that communication, but thanks but I'm glad you let us know.
As long as you let
So,
someone know, that's great.
yeah, just like we talk all the time. We have like weekly meetings with Nicole to make sure we're all aligned. So why don't we go to the section spotlight? Nicole, thank you so much. I'm going to ask if you could answer things in the chat, and
Of course.
we also have open mic at the end, and then we can come back there too. So let's go on to the next slide. And we will provide those PowerPoints so you can see all the stats and everything. All right, section spotlight. Like I said, we're going to spend some time talking about section finances and budgets, a little bit of a refresher first from Nikki, and then we want to spend the majority of the rest of the time here hearing from the two sections we've identified who can talk about what they do as best practices or their challenges, but we also want you all to talk and be part of the conversation and add in what you're doing as well. So Nikki, we're ready for you when you are.
Good day, everyone. So what we'll cover in this session is just an overview of your financial report, so you have a good understanding of how to interpret the information in your financial report, the 3 ways in which AGU supports your section, and then also provide you with the timeline for future reports. Next slide. So your financial report really reflects the financial activity of your section, and it's broken out into 3 key components, which is your revenue, expenses, and net operations, which is the summary of your revenue, your expenses, which you'll see on the other slides as we go through them. And then you have net assets, which I refer to as your cash or your reserves or your funds in the bank. Let's go to the next slide to take a look at the report. So another name for your financial report is profit and loss statement, income statement, and what we refer to in the nonprofit world, a statement of activity. So this is a standard report. It will always show revenue at the top, then it will come after revenue, then will be expenses, and then again, you will see your net operations at the bottom of the report. And this report shown here, this captures this is an example of the end of the year report, which captures 3 years of historical information, and it will always start with the latest. In this example, you see 2021, and then it'll go back to the oldest. But just to provide you that historical information. The other thing I want to highlight here in most of the section reports is majority of the activity for sections occurs around the time of the fall meeting. So as we issue reports throughout the year, you may not see as much financial activity in reports, and that's simply due to majority of the activity occurs at the fall meeting. And so that information is captured in the end of the year report. We can go to the next slide as we break the report down. So revenue again, as I mentioned, would appear at the top of your report. And another name for revenue, just think of it as all your income in cash for revenue. So when you see annual giving, another name for that is just donations and contributions. So this is a donation that is made to your section. Next is sponsorship income. And this is income that comes from a third party that would sponsor an event that would occur typically at the fall meeting. If you need some help or some more information, you would work with the development team. And I see that we have Kara Green on the call who works in development, but you would work with the development team with regards to your sponsorship income, and that's what will appear on the report. Then you have other contributions. Other contributions right here is one of the ways in which AGU supports your program. Supports your program. And so I'll take a deeper dive, but this is where it will appear on your financial report, is underneath the other contributions line. So let's go to the next slide and break down expenses. So another way to think of your expenses is that this is money that is spent. So this is money going out the door. This is typically where you can capture your student activities is also captured here. So I highlighted a few where we see the most activity. So sometimes you may wonder, what's in item 113? Item 113 is where typically comp registration is recorded, OSPA, as well as section awards are recorded here. Underneath item 54, this is your events that are held at the fall meeting, such as your receptions. And then item 55 is ticket sales. And we did hear that there's going to be a slight change in that, but I want to emphasize it's really important that when you register, although there'll be $0, it's important to do that because we need to have a specific head count in order to account for it properly when we issue your financial reports. The other one is item 56, which is the $50 subsidy that we use to help offset your food and beverage costs. Okay. There's also on, I just want to reiterate that for your, if you want to learn more about the descriptions of your expenses, there is a detailed summary that we provide that you can find on the AGU Connect site that provides a more in-depth description of them. But I just wanted to call out those because that's where the most activity occurs in the financial reports. Next one. Okay, so net operations. This is really the net impact of your revenue expenses. So what I like to let you know is if incoming cash is more than outgoing cash, then you will have a surplus and that will be a positive. So you can see that in the middle column where it says $101.72 on this report. So a surplus will increase your net assets, which I refer to as your reserves or your money in the bank. If your incoming cash is less than your outgoing cash, then you will have a deficit. And that's typically shown in parentheses that you see in the far right column, as well as in the first column here. So that means there was more money going out than coming in, and that reduces your net assets. So surplus increases your net assets. A deficit will decrease your net assets. Next slide. So now I'm going to just talk about the 3 ways in which AGU supports your program. We have an incentive program, the $50 subsidy per ticket sale, and then up to $5,000 in student activities. Next slide. So the $50 subsidy is simply a contribution of $50 or greater to qualify as an individual donor, and the contribution can be allocated to any AGU fund. What's key about this, though, is it has to be your primary members in order to receive this incentive. So if there's 5% participation from your primary members making donations of $50 or more to any AGU fund, AGU will give you up to $1,000. And this is reflected in that other contribution line item that I talked about in your revenue section. If it's 7%, then it's $2,000. If it's 10%, it's $3,000. If it's 12% or more, 12%, then it's $4,000. And then if it's 15% or greater, it is $5,000. In the financial report that I use as an example here, you can see every single year from 2019, 2020, and 2021 that they received an incentive of anywhere, I think it was from $3,000 to $1,000, but that means they had some participation from their 5 primary members to contribute $50 or more to any AGU fund. So that's a way, it's shown right here on the slide at the bottom, 2,000, 3,000, 1,000. Okay. Next slide is the $50 subsidy. So again, I know we've made changes and you've all received the communication, and so far, and I've even checked the chat where there's been some positive feedback. But I just want to emphasize it's really important with regards to making sure that you register and you check that box, although there's a $0 fee, because it does impact the recording of on your financial reports, as well as the $50 subsidy. But the $50 subsidy is simply what AGU does is they look at the number of registrants based upon your event and take that times a $50 subsidy to help offset your food and beverage costs for your event. Okay. And then last is board designated funds. So what AGU does is AGU will contribute up to $5,000 for funds spent on student activities. An example of some of these student activities are joint and early career mixers or a networking luncheon, as well as student travel grants and OSPA. So if you spend $5,000, AGU will give you $5,000. If you spend $1,000, AGU will give you up to $1,000. If you spend $7,500, AGU will only give you up to $5,000 for your funds spent on student activities. Okay, next slide. And so this is just a schedule of future financial reports that we'll be issuing. So we have a year-to-date, June financials, which will be issued next month. And then the next set of reports will be our year-to-date October financials that will be issued in November. Are there any questions?
Questions in the chat, and I'm wondering if we could, Nikki and Greg may be able to help with some of this too. And then we can go on to our section folks who are going to talk about budgeting. So Kimberly's asking in the past about the reception subsidy. In the past, section funds cover the remaining costs. Will sections be billed any costs for the receptions, or are the registration fees for the attendees essentially covering this through AGU?
Okay, so you're talking about for your section events, right? So that depends. So let me just take a deeper dive. So when you have your section events, typically what happens is majority of between the ticket sales and the $50 subsidy, that typically offsets your cost for the event. There are instances where that is not necessarily the case. But for the most part, we do try to make you whole. And I'm going to just tap Greg to probably walk through an example of when the section may be responsible for the additional costs.
So for receptions, basically, as Nikki said, the ticket sales and the subsidy covers the cost of food and beverage, so they offset. The only thing a section will have to pay for their reception and section gathering is that they have AV costs. Usually some sections like to rent computers, screens, projectors for their business meeting. The section will have to pay for those costs. So the only thing you're really paying for when your reception is your AV costs.
Great, thank you. And there are a few other questions. I think I'm going to jump over to the sections to talk about their things, and maybe Greg and Nikki, you can answer in the chat, or we can kind of circle back. Let's go to the next slide.
Circle back for Laura Luke's question. I see that.
Okay, cool. So we've got ASE in the education section. So Kristen St. John and Eric Bruning, thank you so much for offering to, or taking us up on our offer to volunteer and tell us a little bit about how you do this. Again, one of the main reasons to have this meeting monthly is to hear from your peers on how they do things. So Kristen, why don't we start with you and then go to Eric, and then, you know, we'd like this to be conversational, so jump in however you like. Kristen, you want to get us started?
Yeah, so hi everyone. I have 3 slides, but I'm also going to screen share in a moment a spreadsheet that we have developed and are using as an example of what we do. So I think at this point, I've been, I'm in my 3rd year in a leadership, my 1st year as president, and it's probably taken me this long to try to really understand, and maybe I'm like 70% understanding financial information that we've received from AGU. So the refreshers are always helpful. We pay attention to the financial records for our section because we are really young, not in age, but young as a section. And we want to grow and we want to serve our members better, and it takes money to do things. And we also feel that it's a responsibility to manage money properly. So sometimes it feels like we're pushing a boulder up a bit, but we're constantly trying to figure out what the numbers mean and when things are happening. So the way that we've been going about this, and these are my reflections, as the president this year, I really relied on past president knowledge and data. So spreadsheets that were shared with me or copies of emails that had anything to do with financial information. I would take the reports, the PDFs that we get, and I'd annotate them. And then I created a spreadsheet based on trying to assimilate a lot of this information. So I'll show you that momentarily. And then we ask a lot of questions. I think, Tanya and Nikki talk a lot, and I will be continuing that tradition, I think, to ask questions. And if I don't understand, I might have to ask again or ask others to try to get the information that I need to try to make sense of our numbers. And the plan, the way we try to approach things, we don't have a lot of money as a young, small, new section. We try to plan with a cushion based on what we know about previous year's costs. And so much of that is based on the annual meeting. So next slide. So Nikki just went over categories in those financial reports, and I wanted to comment on what we really pay attention to and then show you. So I really do. I think the report that came out most recently, the one that sums up a whole year, is the most important one. The others I'm honestly not finding that useful. So it's that one report that matters. The new cover sheet approach, thank you. That really helps. And then we look at the different categories. So for us, annual giving, that really matters because we have a development campaign, we have goals to meet. So I'm paying attention to that. Sponsorship, this is a new thing for us. We have one, we do have some money, but I'm not honestly paying that much attention to it because of the other things that are higher priority right now, including that next category that's just other. We want to meet that 5% bar, so that matters. Then even though the reports have expenses next, the next thing that really matters to us is what that AGU contribution is, which is way down on the page, because we see that as like special revenue, and we want to spend that full $5,000. So we want to plan to spend it. And then when I think about expenses and just, some general points, as Nikki said, it is nearly all meeting related, although it's not necessarily all coded that way. So in my mind, that's how I have to think about it. Sometimes there are novel expenses like honoraria. I'll show you that in our spreadsheet. And then in my mind, even though there are lines under the expenses big header, some of those as from a section perspective, I actually see as revenue because they're negative numbers in the expenses. I'll show you. The other things that we pay attention to, when Josh recently posted some information about the meeting expenses, that was like a deep dive. It was a way to see, and I saw questions in the chat about this, like, well, how many people are coming? You can see that in those reports. And so that was helpful for me to try to reconcile some numbers. So just click once, please. And then I'm going to screen share. So I'm going to show you an example. Clicking doesn't even matter. I'm just going to screen share. So this will stop screen sharing. Yes, I want to stop other people from screen sharing. And I'm going to pick this screen. Okay, do you guys see my spreadsheet, or now you do? Okay, so I'm going to try to make it just a little bigger. Of course, you're not going to see everything, but the part of the goal is to show everyone how we try to take the information from the financial reports, and then these columns, column A and B, these columns over here are the same categories that are in that financial report. Then there's a column where I've had to just lay out in language that I understand what the heck that means. What is that category? And then we've taken, this is like our master spreadsheet for our financial summaries for the whole time we've been a section, because we are a pretty young section. And then I have a column where it's just like notes and questions. So there are some things that have mattered, I think, like we can see here, we have a 0 for other contributions. We missed the mark. We didn't get 5% making the donation. So we didn't get the $1,000 last year. That sucks. And now we're really trying to pay more attention to that. We can't just assume it's going to happen. I apologize for scrolling. I don't want to make anybody nauseous. Let me try and make it just a little bigger. I hope that helps. So then there's the expenses, and the two rows that are like the lighter pink color, I wanted to draw attention to that because these are the ones that, if you see, they all have negative numbers. And so to me, I don't really see that as an expense. I see that as income. So I'm just like, it's a visual clue that that's different. Okay. And then a big thing, there's that board contribution row. And that really matters to us a lot. And there's a whole other tab in my spreadsheet here about that. A few other things, like sometimes we have questions. There, for example, well, I'll just go here. You know, we recently got this, looked at our recent statement. I try to reconcile that with emails that we had sent about how much students should have been paid for certain items. And if I see an inconsistency, I'm flagging it and I'm trying to put a question over to the side. So I'm keeping track of what's what. And so when you see things in red, that's something that I need to follow up on. And I mean, you know, talking and emailing to try to reconcile things. Yeah, there are some differences in like paying the OSPA awards. You know, we have to tell, so this row right here, we have to tell AGU, I think, let's see, yeah, Josh asked for the information not that long ago, like, okay, you know, planning for fall meeting, how many awards are you going to contribute money towards? Well, we have to, you know, commit early on that. But then we still want sometimes to give, I'm going to go up here, maybe we have a little money where we can give some more money to other people besides how it's funneled through the AGU umbrella system. So that's kind of like divided out and accounted in differently. Let's see. I think what I want to do now is show you some of the other, I can't see questions at all right now. So if there are questions, you'll have to like speak up or I can try later. There are other tabs in this spreadsheet. So that we have a few tabs about comps, because that was one of the things that we always have to communicate back to AGU about, okay, who, you know, where's money going to go? And we're having to commit money. One of the challenges this year with comps, and I guess that's accounted for up in this row, our section has a tradition of paying the meeting registration fee for the leaders in our section who are on the fall meeting program committee, who manage OSPA, and who are the student and early career leaders. So that's a lot of money, you know, a lot of commitment, plus our awardee, our section awardee. So when we got I'm going to go here. When we got the information a few weeks ago, oh, not this, yeah, here we go. Sorry for the scrolling. When we got the information from a few weeks ago that registration for the meeting is going up like a lot, that affected, like I was about to hit the button, say, Josh, here's what we're going to pay for the meeting, but I had to reevaluate that and, you know, think about, okay, what did we have to pay last year? What would we pay this year if we pay the full registration rates? And then, okay, what if we do it, but based on last year's money? And so that's what we decided we're going to have to do. We don't have a lot of extra money. We don't have a big pot of like reserve money. So we can't pay the way we've done at other years. So that's something that we have, you know, I've had to communicate and say, I'm sorry, we can only pay at last year's registration rates, but that's better than not at all. And the last thing I want to point out is we are keeping track of that board designated funds. So I'll go back to this row right here where we want to spend $5,000, like we want to do that. So we keep track. I pulled information from past years and I just kind of dumped it here, but this is our current year planning. Right, so we want to get to 5,000. You can see here we're over 5,000, but that's because we're going to try to have some extra money from our own section to cover some of these other, you know, other services to our members, some extra travel. So, and then I make a note about, okay, here's the numbers in the spreadsheet, and this is what I sent to Josh. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I had one last slide. I don't know. I don't think I have control of that though.
Want to go ahead while Josh is bringing that back up? I see your hand up.
Oh, can I do my last slide now?
Oh, okay, now it's
So
up.
now that
Okay,
it's up,
yep.
okay, thanks. Okay, so things that I feel like we or our section could use more clarity on or more assistance with is when there's a changing time that it's a challenging timing issue because the sections have to commit to funds for annual meeting activities, but we don't always have the data to try to make decisions. And that example about the increased fee for registration rates, I mean, that was like back to back, suddenly, whoa, let's rethink. So that was one. A second thought is it would be great if the financial reports could be simplified, like all of those rows that have zeros, don't need them. Could it be provided to us in a spreadsheet format, maybe like with explanations, kind of like what we created? Because maybe I've made mistakes and it'd be great from your end. And then like my dream thing, and this is now connecting more to development, is if as standard practice, the development team could tell the section leaders at a time when we could do something about it, what % of our members have made a donation. So maybe this is a couple junctures throughout the year, but if we don't find out, I mean, I was pretty disappointed that we didn't hit the 5% and there's nothing I can do about that now. So anyway, that's what we're trying to do. I hope that was useful. Thanks.
No, that's really, really helpful. Nikki, you've had your hand up and let's go to Eric Bruning after that and then we can get to some more questions. Go ahead, Nikki.
So a couple things. I want to say this was great, Kristen. I really appreciate you sharing this information. It gives great insight. There's a couple things that I did think about while watching what you went through. So I'm going to work with Rose's team and see if there's some ways that we can improve, simplify things for you. It may be what we could also do and add, wanting to know where you are in terms of the 5%, 7%, maybe when we issue the reports, maybe if development can share that information with us, could they track that information? So that way, you know how close you are, and if you want to take a step further, just have more of a detailed conversation with development, at that juncture. But those are my initial thoughts, but I thought this was really great. To see this, because we don't necessarily get the opportunity to hear the frustrations and we work together back and forth to try to help you with a deeper dive. But I think it's really great to see how you actually plan. So now to see how you plan and how you have to figure out things and interpret your financial report gives some insight that I can the finance team can again work with Rose's team and even coordinate with development on how some things we can perfect the experience.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you both. So we've got Eric Bruning, who's also going to talk to us about how his section handles financials. Eric?
Yeah, thanks. I want to first echo some other things in the chat. Kristen's presentation and suggestions are enormously helpful and beneficial, and I guess leave it to an educator to summarize things so well and so comprehensively. So, and thanks, Nikki, too. I picked up a few things that I'll carry forward from your presentation. So that's great. So I'm representing atmospheric and space electricity. We're also a small section, but maybe in contrast to education, we've been around basically since the beginning of AGU. Probably the thing that most changes for us is we do have somewhere in the $20,000 to $30,000 cash reserve, and so that does help us buffer some of the uncertainty in the planning, and we can kind of adjust from year to year. But I would love to have greater clarity so we could maybe be more aggressive about how we use those funds instead of using it to buffer uncertainty. I mentioned we're a small section. For us, that means that we're basically one track of sessions on 3 days at the fall meeting, and we're also very stable as a section. We're sort of the primary annual destination for the atmospheric electricity community in the Americas and internationally. So we have a a pretty good sense of how things run from year to year and good handover from leadership. Let's see. I was going to summarize a little bit about our numbers, but Nikki actually showed you our numbers. Those were our section's spreadsheet. Maybe the one other thing I'll highlight from that is that we do occasionally have one of the private sector Lightning data providers want to sponsor some part of the reception or business meeting. That typically winds up going afoul of AGU's rules. So the one place we could maybe go there to raise some money, the thing they want to sponsor, AG won't let us sponsor. So we have to sometimes be a little clever about that negotiation. Otherwise, let's see. Very much like education, the rest of the budget is trying to use what AGU provides for early career activities and spend things at the annual meeting to make sure we're taking maximum advantage of what AGU provides and not go too much in the negative pain for projectors at the fall meeting. So at the business meeting. So I'll leave it there and hopefully leave more time for discussion.
Thanks for that, Eric. And I do see a few things in the chat, wondering if folks want to jump on. I will jump into one of them about publicizing. I think what we can do is bring Vicky back for another refresher like we've done with Nikki in the development team. And hi, Kara, I see you here, but I think you're just a few weeks into AGU. She's our new director of development. So I'm sure the two of them can put their heads together. I know that Vicky, after the onboarding calls that some of you did with us in January, February, I think she did one-on-ones with some of you in terms of putting together plans that include outreach and publicity and that kind of thing in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So it's kind of individualized and we can bring her back. But I think you saw Vicky's email in the chat and you can, if there's an immediate question, you can reach out to her or let us know. We can set up something for you. Does anyone else want to go while we're looking at stuff in the chat here? Just go ahead and jump in.
I'm just going to jump in here real quick, and because I heard, to have reports in Excel. So, and I just want to share the why they're in PDF is just so the data is not altered or manipulated. So we typically issue reports in PDF, but we can see about if we do explore in Excel, just making sure we have both. We just want to make sure numbers are not manipulated or changed to show that this was the actual report that came from finance. So I just wanted to share with the reason why they are in PDF format. But again, we'll take a deeper dive and see if we can marry something to, again, enhance your experience.
Yeah, definitely. We can work together on that. And Kimberly, we see your hand up. Go ahead. Now you have some things in the chat as well. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I was just going to ask the thing in the chat, if that's okay, is to Eric, wondering, it seems like an impressive amount of reserve that you have. Wondering how you raise that money. If you could just comment on whether whether that's through entirely membership donations or also you have some sponsors outside, and maybe even if there's time, a little bit more on how you contact those sponsors and raise it. I didn't know that we have this excellent staff in AGU to help us with that, but just wondering from a real live other president to who's sort of not, this isn't their area of expertise necessarily.
Sure. Let's see, for the cash reserve, that I actually don't know where that came from because I've only seen records going back a few years, having just come into the role. But I will go actually ask our section historical section leadership how that got built up over time. I suspect since we've been around for like I said, since the beginning of AGU, that we probably have had a lot of years to slowly build that up, and perhaps AGU's funding model has changed over time as well. We do have a very engaged membership as well. Again, I think it's part of that history. We have a lot of senior folks who are very committed to the section, and it's probably a little easier for them to give and for us to receive those matching funds as well. It's not all just early career people that we're trying to reach out to. So
So this year you have funding that's this past cash reserve. Would you say that you have active engagements with any other sponsors, or would you say that at this point, the money that's keeping it sort of level, or at least your cash reserves, is from membership?
Yeah, it's mostly membership and the AGU contribution that we rely on. The sponsorships have been kind of hit or miss because we can't really promise the sponsor that we could have to do what the sponsor wants us to do with the money. And so i.e. sponsor the business, sponsor the food at the reception. So that is sort of hit or miss. It's a small enough community that we do know those relationships with industry pretty well. So it's not hard for us to reach out to those folks. And at least one of the companies has been, fairly receptive.
And I'll just add to Eric's comment is just looking at the historical financials that I have here, because I did use them as an example, but they have taken advantage of the 3 ways in which AGU supports their program, which always will increase your net assets and and trying to minimize their expenses. But you can see for the past since 2019 example that I used, that they took advantage of the incentive program. Then also with the $50 subsidy, the ticketed sales. One of those years they did maximize the spend on student activities. So they had up to 5,000. So what you have is, let's say if you had spend of, $8,000 or something like that, they have the 5,000, they have the other contribution, and then they have the offset. So that really helped to increase their net assets. And I know that can be rather difficult, but that's just an example that I see that looking at the financial data, it really indicates that they try to maximize the incentives that AGU helps to support your section. And listening to your feedback, I think there'll be some ways to try to give you all a heads up on information so you can take advantage of those, especially like with the incentive program, to see where you are to help, because I think every little bit counts, right?
Thanks everyone for the discussion. We've got about 3 minutes left. So I'm looking through the chat and seeing a lot of good feedback in terms of tactically what we can do. So I think Nikki and I can kind of take that back and see what we can do and do some follow-ups on these monthly calls, and you'll get emails from Josh as well. In, I guess, just a few weeks on your next set of financials. But to Kristen's point, that's not going to be as fulsome because that's for the beginning of the year, right? So as the last one you got. So does anyone, I'm looking through the chat really quickly to see if I can surface anything, but anyone else want to, in the next few minutes, just go ahead and yell out if you want to talk, or let's see.
The questions came up twice on the membership numbers.
Yeah.
So the membership numbers are calculated at the end of the year, December 31st. It is always calculated at the end of the year to determine who receives incentive. But what I'm hearing is you would like to know ahead of time, like how you're trending or how how you're trending. And so what we can do is my initial thoughts in working with Vicki Thompson to see if we can incorporate that information when we issue the financial report. So that way you have a sense of how you're trending. If you can reach out, increase your engagement and things like that to receive that incentive. And just remember, it's $50 from your primary members to any AGU fund. So it's any AGU fund. It can be directly to your section, but any AGU fund, it counts. But it's always done at the end of the year is what it's done. So we have to wait until the books are officially closed. But I think in you knowing how you're trending throughout the year, we'll look to incorporate that information.
Is there a way to get historical numbers? I'm guessing that the answer is AGU Connects, but like, or work through Josh or something. But if we get historical numbers, that'll give us an idea of like, if we're at like, 1% of historical numbers, that at least gives us an numbers of members. That would at least help.
I think we can work with development. She has that information. It can share where you've trended over the years, like 1%. And again, maybe we can incorporate that somewhere on the financial report or context. Like you all, great. Thanks for the feedback on the cover letter. I'm working with Rose's team for that. So maybe there's a way, as well as incorporate the financial data, we can show you, okay, oh, this was 1% this year, 2%, 3%. We can try to incorporate that in a note or somewhere on the report or part of the cover letter too.
I meant member numbers, not like contribution percentages, but
No, I'm
member
talking about the
numbers.
percentage. I'm talking about the percentage.
And
I
I'm
don't-
talking about member numbers.
Right, so if you
So
see it
like
like.
how many members? Like, do we have 1,000 members in EPSB? Do we have 100? Do we have 10,000?
Yeah,
Like,
generally, yeah, hey, Kimberly, generally for something like that, you can talk to Josh on my team and, at any point we can kind of run a report. And we are also looking at, this is down the line, and we can talk to you about it, but we're also looking at section data that we kind of provide on a regular basis and dashboards and that kind of thing that we've talked to the digital team about, and that may be another resource. But if you have a kind of a simple request, we can get the numbers for you.
And also Greg just added in the chat that you can use, you can look at your access to your historical member numbers in Tableau. So maybe have some training on that if you don't know how to access that information, Kimberly. And then for others on the team, maybe, if it's available.
Yeah.
Because there's another question on it too. So maybe to do, he did a link there, but maybe that's one to add down the road, Rosa.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Martha, you've had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering why it seems quite difficult to have to make this percentage right by the end of the year and you don't know what you got. Why can't we just do it from the last year? Just look at, the percentage that you just got from the last year, getting that number the next year for your, rather count that percentage of people based on the last year's number of figures rather than the current years, which you don't know until the very end of the year. It's very, it's just not, it's just anxiety producing. You don't know what your numbers are and you're never going to know until it's too late.
Martha, are you asking if we can change our policy to do it off of prior year numbers? Are you?
Yeah,
or
that's what I'm asking. Why are we,
Okay.
why can't we change that?
I'm not sure how to answer that simply just because it's our policy and it's based upon the end of the year. I can let Mary chime in here if you want to, Mary.
Yeah, what I would say is, thanks for the suggestion. We'll look at it.
Good.
It's a current policy. We're gonna have to take a look at it, see what the impact would be on everybody, and see if it works. If we can make things easier and more flexible and it makes sense for everybody, we'll consider it. So thanks for the suggestion. We'll look at it, Martha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stefania.
Hi, I'm from the Science and Society section, and then I came with a question about policy as well, because I'm seeing the situation of the education section and our section, and remembering, if I remember right, because I don't have the data on my screen right now, a lot of people that belong to our section, we are not their primary section because the nature of our association. Then a lot of people has it's physics or astrophysics or whatever section can be, and they are really involved in our areas now. They're really involved in doing interdisciplinary work in science and society, in education, and they are not going to change their primary section because they can take, this is not the money that pay their professor position or the researcher position. Then they will say in our section as a secondary section, even if they are really, really active. Then we are not seeing the money in our sections. Then maybe it's a question about that proportion, if someone has 2 sections in their membership, to see a little bit of that support or funds that are contributing to the association. Because if not, for us, it's going to be really hard to make that switch. And even it's really hard to change that section as which one do you want as a primary. Last year during our lunch, we were showing people oh, do you want ours as a primary? And in the platform, it's really hard. And people is not concerned about doing those change in their profiles. Then thinking about how we can contribute to the secondary section, especially thinking about the newies that we are in to support our work and that growing part of our topics.
Yeah, thanks for surfacing that. You are not the first to mention that. I see Kristen nodding her head as well in agreement. So again, it is kind of a policy type thing. So I think it's something that we take back and look at, but that's not unusual, I think, for some sections that we're hearing. So I think we need to look at it. Yeah. And it also, I'm seeing in the chat that Tableau isn't working. So let us figure it out and we'll put something in the chat. I mean, not in the chat, in the email that Josh sends with the recording, whatever that dashboard is, to make sure it's okay. Well, we're past time and I'm glad we kept the conversation going. We still have a fair number of people on here and I'm glad to stay on for a little bit longer. But do folks have other questions that they want to bring up or stuff that we kind of missed in the chat that you have a burning desire to get answered today? Anyone? All right, well, I want to thank you so much for being on the call. And you've heard me say this before, but it's still true that we really appreciate AGU appreciates the volunteer work that you do for the organization, in addition to your real life and your work life and everything else that's going on. We really appreciate all of it. And my other usual pitch, if you have ideas for the monthly calls, let me know. The last couple of calls, the ideas for section spotlights have come from you. So keep those ideas coming so we can do something next month. I think next month we're going to, in July, we're going to concentrate on a section highlight around kind of outreach and communications like newsletters and social media, webinars, that kind of thing. So we'll talk about that, but also would love to get some other ideas. So with that, I'll say bye and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.